is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill. We know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Happy Friday and welcome to Firstpost America, your global pit stop for the latest news and headlines from the United States and around the world. I'm Eric Ham, coming to you live from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We'll get you a roundup of all the day's top stories, but first, let's take a look at the headlines. An Israeli airstrike kills at least 6, including 4 children, in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. Palestinian officials say that 3 missiles hit a house where people were asleep. British Foreign Minister David Cameron meets Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv. The United Kingdom announces aid worth almost $4 billion for Ukraine. U.S. President Joe Biden rewards veteran Democrats with the top civilian honor. Former Vice President Al Gore, former Secretary of State John Kerry, and former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi will receive the top honors. A dam collapses in southern Brazil after days of heavy rain. Authorities say at least 29 people killed, with almost 60 still missing. And Kenya appoints its first woman Air Force chief. Major General Fatuma Ahmad joined the Air Force in 1983 and broke multiple gender barriers in her illustrious military career. We begin in the Middle East, and the war between Israel and Hamas is spilling over into a different front. Turkey has decided to halt all trade with Israel, including exports and imports. Turkey's Ministry of Trade says that measures will remain in place until Israel allows unrestricted humanitarian aid into Gaza.
Beginning from yesterday, the trade halt against Israel, including import and export, will continue until a permanent ceasefire in Gaza is secured, as well as unhindered humanitarian aid flow to the region.
Ankara has accused Israel of creating a humanitarian tragedy in the Gaza Strip by killing innocent Palestinians. Turkey has also confirmed that the trade suspension will cover all products. Last year, trade between the two nations reached almost $7 billion. Turkey's 3 biggest imports from Israel include refined petroleum, scrap iron, and polymers. Meanwhile, Ankara's 3 biggest exports to Israel are raw iron bars, automobiles, and jewelry. Now, the trade suspension is likely to impact at least 200 industries in both countries. Israel has accused Turkey of breaking international regulations by suspending trade, which is bound by government-to-government agreements. Now, Israel's foreign minister has accused Turkey's president of acting like a dictator. The Israeli leader also claimed that Ankara was already preventing Israeli shops from unloading goods at Turkish ports. Turkey had already imposed trade restrictions earlier in April. Only this time, Ankara has gone beyond just halting trade with Israel. Ankara has also signaled that it will formally support South Africa's genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice.
Today we submitted the results of our consultations to our president. And according to the political decision which was taken, I want to mention it for the first time here. We decided to join the court case submitted by South Africa against Israel in the International Court of Justice. With this step, we expect the process in the International Court of Justice to proceed in a right way.
Now, ties between the two nations date back to over half a century. In fact, Turkey was the first Muslim-majority nation to recognize Israel back in 1949. However, ties between the two countries has disintegrated in recent years. President Erdogan has openly criticized Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu since Israel declared war on Hamas after the October 7th terror attacks. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Netanyahu has accused Ankara of committing heinous crimes against people of the Kurdish community. And as Israel carries on with its war against Hamas, it's facing growing diplomatic isolation, with Colombia joining the ranks of Turkey and South Africa. Colombia has announced that it will cut all diplomatic ties with Israel for the killing of over 34,000 Palestinian civilians. In fact, the Colombian president has called Prime Minister Netanyahu genocidal as the South American nation looks to end decades-long ties with Israel. Moving to the United States, President Joe Biden addressed the nation regarding the widespread pro-Palestinian protests spreading across college campuses. President Biden reaffirmed his Middle East policies and American support for Israel in the war against Hamas. However, the United States president reiterated that no support would be extended to Israel if, in fact, it launches an operation into the southern Gaza city of Rafah. Now, referring to things at home, President Biden said students had the right to protest, but any form of violence would not be tolerated.
Before I head to North Carolina, I wanted to speak for a few moments about what's going on our college campuses here. We've all seen the images, and they put to the test two fundamental American principles. The first is the right to free speech and for people to peacefully assemble and make their voices heard. The second is the rule of law. Both must be upheld. We are not an authoritarian nation where we silence people or squash dissent. The American people are heard. In fact, peaceful protest is in the best tradition of how Americans respond to consequential issues. But neither are we a lawless country. We are a civil society, and order must prevail.
Now, the president urged pro-Palestinian protesters to respect law and order and not engage in violent demonstrations.
So let me be clear. Peaceful protest in America. Violent protest is not protected. Peaceful protest is. It's against the law when violence occurs. Destroying property is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest. Threatening people, intimidating people, instilling fear in people is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law.
President Biden also spoke out against rising cases of anti-Semitism, adding that America had no place for hate.
Let's be clear about this as well. There should be no place on any campus, no place in America for anti-Semitism or threats of violence against Jewish students. There is no place for hate speech or violence of any kind, whether it's anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or discrimination against Arab Americans or Palestinian Americans. It's simply wrong. There's no place for racism in America. It's all wrong. It's un-American. I understand people have strong feelings and deep convictions. In America, we respect the right and protect the right for them to express that. But it doesn't mean anything goes.
Meanwhile, President Biden's political rival, Donald Trump, diverted attention from his ongoing hush money criminal trial to comment on the pro-Palestinian protests across campuses.
So we're going to go in right now, and I will comment just quickly on the colleges and universities. It's a shame. I'm so proud of the New York's finest. They're great people too. I know so many of them. They're incredible. They did a job at Columbia, and likewise in Los Angeles, they did a really good job at UCLA. It was very much embedded. And just so you understand, this is the radical left. This is a movement from the left, not from the right. The right is not your problem, despite what law enforcement likes to say. The FBI director said that he worries about the right. Now, don't worry about the right. The right's fine. Worry about the left, because this is a movement from the left. These are radical left lunatics. And they got to be stopped now, because it's going to go on, and it's going to get worse and worse. And, you know, they take over countries, okay? And we're not letting them take over the USA. We're not letting the radical left morons take over this country. You can't let that happen.
Already more than 2,000 student protesters have been arrested from at least 40 different colleges, and demonstrators calling for a ceasefire in Gaza and demanding academic institutions divest from Israel. However, many colleges have called the police to crack down on the protests and are outright refusing divestiture. With growing civil unrest at home, the nation is mirroring the unrest that occurred in 2020 in the aftermath of the George Floyd killing by police. And just like the Black Lives Matter protest became a major flashpoint that shaped the political climate in 2020, many are wondering if the current season of unrest playing out across colleges and universities throughout the nation will shape the outcome in November. And now for the latest in violence-plagued Haiti, criminal gangs have once again laid siege to the country's capital, Port-au-Prince. Now, this is one of the biggest attacks on the capital city since the Caribbean nation announced its next prime minister earlier this week. Neighborhoods located southwest of Haiti's main international airport were the worst affected, where gang members burnt houses and exchanged gunfire with police for hours.
They were shooting very intensely with heavy weapons. So it is a hellish situation that we have been experiencing since last night in Delmas. They have been setting fire to things non-stop.
Now, following the fresh wave of violence, hundreds more fled their homes in Port-au-Prince. In fact, many were seen walking along the city streets, carrying their children in search of a safe haven. Some were also seen carrying essentials as they left their homes. Now, dozens of these families have sought refuge in already overcrowded shelters.
We experienced a very difficult night with a lot of shooting throughout the night, but our God still reigns.
The problem is that Haiti doesn't offer anything. It's just batons and bullets. That's what there is in Haiti for young people. Here near Champ de Mars, nobody can go there. Nobody can be free in this country. You can be kidnapped. The food is bad.
Now, according to reports, the new wave of violence erupted in the area controlled by powerful gang leader Jimmy Cherizier. He recently threatened violence if the gangs were ignored by the new government, as Cherizier demanded a seat at the table. Now, Cherizier is seen as the catalyst for the violence plaguing the nation. On February 29th, armed gangs burnt police stations, opened fire on the main international airport, and stormed the country's two largest prisons, releasing more than 4,000 inmates.
There are important areas. There are strategic places. We are fighting to reclaim so that they can become our territories, which will allow us to win the battle for the ousting of Prime Minister Ariel Henry as quickly as possible. And then we will begin the fight against the system in place to have the country we want, a Haiti with employment for all, a Haiti with security, a Haiti with free education, a Haiti without social discrimination, where all people can achieve the standing they want.
Now, these coordinated attacks forced the former Prime Minister Ariel Henry to resign last month, following which a transitional council took over and put in place a new prime minister. Now, both Fritz Belazier, the new prime minister, and the transitional council face a daunting task ahead of not just bringing stability to the crisis-ridden nation, but also reining in the gangs and putting an end to the violence. And as we're beginning to see, that task is far easier said than done. In West Africa, tensions are running high as Russian and American troops share the same military base in Niger. Troops of the two rival nations are face to face, sharing an airbase in Niger's capital, Niamey. However, reports suggest that the soldiers are based in different hangars. As Niger's junta rejects American military presence, the entry of Vladimir Putin's forces raises concerns over Russia's access to U.S. military installations. Our next report goes inside the tense face-off between the rival powers.
Imagine two rivals meeting in a foreign land. What do you think will happen? Well, there's bound to be some friction. In extreme situations, things may get out of hand too. An airbase in the West African nation of Niger is witnessing something similar, with tensions simmering. Russian troops have entered Airbase 101, which is next to Diori Hamani International Airport in Niger's capital city, Niamey. But the military airbase is also housing American troops. This comes after a decision by Niger's junta to expel US forces. The entry of Vladimir Putin's soldiers has put American and Russian troops in close proximity, at a time when the two countries are at loggerheads over the conflict in Ukraine. Reports say the Russian forces were not mingling with the US troops, and that they were using a separate hangar at Airbase 101. However, the presence of Russian troops has also raised concerns over the fate of American installations at the airbase. Addressing the concerns, the U.S. Defense Secretary, Lloyd, said that the Russian troops did not have access to American equipment.
I think you know that Airbase 101, where our forces is a Nigerian Air Force base that is co-located with an international airport in the capital city. The Russians are in a separate compound and don't have access to U.S. forces or access to our equipment. And this is something that, again, I'm always focused on the safety and the protection of our troops, something that we'll continue to watch. But right now, I don't see a significant issue here in terms of our force protection.
The United States has been a key partner to Niger in its fight against the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda affiliates in the Sahel region. The US had constructed a $100 million airbase in Niger and has nearly 1,000 troops stationed in the country. But after the coup in July last year, the Niger junta rulers expelled American and French troops. Niger is not the only country in the region to expel Western forces. The US and its allies have been forced to pull troops out of several African countries after coups. West African nations like Chad, Mali, and Burkina Faso forced US and French troops out recently. And as discontent against the West grows in military-ruled African nations, both China and Russia have been making inroads. Beijing and Moscow have been strengthening their relations with African countries, pitching themselves as friendly partners without a colonial background in the region. So now, resource-rich Africa is being courted by the US, Russia, and China. By picking sides, will the continent usher in a new world order?
And finally, former U.S. President Donald Trump has found a kindred spirit when it comes to the salacious and the scandalous. South Dakota governor and noted MAGA supporter Kristi Noem is slowly becoming Trump's wingman. The self-proclaimed animal lover is facing massive backlash for shooting and killing her family dog for being, quote, too dangerous. Noem claims the euthanizing her dog, albeit violently, shows her willingness to do anything difficult, messy, and ugly. The South Dakota governor was until this incident widely touted as a potential running mate for the ex-president. Now, it looks like Noem didn't just kill her dog, but also her chances of becoming Trump's running mate. Our final report takes you inside the scandal-plagued governor's plight.
When talking of the Republican Party and controversies, the first name that would pop up in anyone's mind is that of Donald Trump. But Trump's got competition now. Giving him a fight when it comes to rows and scandals is Kristi Noem. She's the governor of the U.S. state of South Dakota. The self-proclaimed animal lover and a family-focused woman is currently in the eye of a storm. The 52-year-old is facing massive criticism for shooting dead her 14-month-old dog named Cricket. She has shared this gruesome story in graphic detail in her forthcoming memoir. Mind you, it's not just the dog. She also shot a goat. These killings, she says, show her willingness to do anything difficult, messy, and ugly. But why are Noem's controversies of any consequence? And why is she worthy of global headlines? Well, this so-called troublemaker is a contender for Donald Trump's vice presidential running mate. However, the chances now appear as dead as the dog she killed. Reports say that after her latest goof-up, Noem has almost no chance of being on a ticket. Some political experts have even deemed her useless, saying what she brings to the table is a possibility of weirdo drama. Now Noem's damage control tour is in full swing. She claims reports of her killing a puppy was fake news, adding that the dog in question was in fact a working dog and that it was extremely dangerous and deserved its fate. In an interview, she claimed that the dog killed her neighbor's chicken and proved itself to be untrainable and worthless, which is when she decided to put it down. In her book, Noem also reportedly says she decided to kill the goat because it was nasty, smelt disgusting, and loved to chase her children. Now, critics say there was no need to describe the killings in the memoir, as this has only hurt Noem's chances to become the running mate of Trump, who reportedly expressed qualms about her controversies earlier this year. Reports say Donald Trump made a joke about Noem's baggage, referring to her alleged extramarital affair with Trump's former campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski. However, Noem has repeatedly denied the affair, saying the rumor is total garbage and a disgusting lie. Noem, who took over as South Dakota's first female governor in 2018, has also been widely mocked for her decisions in recent weeks. This was after she filmed a promotional video for a cosmetic dentistry, which raised ethical questions and brought a lawsuit against her. She also released advertisements featuring herself dressing up as a construction worker and a state trooper in an apparent bid to draw new residents to her state. But this move too backfired at her amid allegations of spending millions of dollars of state fund. Last month, she came under fire after refusing to say whether victims of rape and incest should be excluded from an abortion ban. Noem said she does not believe a tragedy should perpetuate another tragedy. During the COVID-19 pandemic, she faced backlash for not issuing statewide lockdowns, business closures, or mandate to wear face masks. Now, as the November polls get closer and closer, it would be interesting to see if Noem manages to get a ticket to run for vice president or drop the ball once again.
That's our show for today. We certainly thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you have a great weekend, and we look forward to seeing you right back here next week. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.
In the US, the police have launched a crackdown